my name is Addie of Well Loved Clothing, and today we are doing something so much fun. It is one of my favorite things to do. I feel like y'all have probably missed it. My son's running around on the floor right now, so he might grab the tripod, but we'll see. But we are going to be doing a thrift flip today, and it is a thrift flip from fabric, and so I don't know how you feel about that, whether a thrift flip has to be like from clothes, but I got this piece secondhand, thrifty piece, yay, and I'm turning it into something new. So to me, that is a thrift flip. And it is probably the best thrift flip I have ever done. I am so excited to share this. So this was the first piece of clothing that I made after I quit YouTube. And so when I quit YouTube, I really wasn't thinking that I was gonna come back to it anytime soon. I didn't know if that was like a far future thing. I just didn't want to put any like super hard parameters on nevers in that place because that felt like a promise to myself and I just didn't know what the future held. And so the future has held me coming back to YouTube, which I'm very thankful for. But with that, I am so thankful that I filmed this dress. This was the first piece that I made when I did take my indefinite break. And I was kind of like, I'm not going to film it. I'm just going to let it be free and enjoy the process. But I almost feel like I forgot how to sew without filming parts of it because it just became part of the creative process. And so I was filming as I was doing it, not for any specific purpose, but I'm so thankful that I have this footage to share with you guys because I can show you how I made this dress and maybe you can make your own or just get inspired. So my thrift flips are just taking a thrifted piece and creating something completely new, and this is the inspiration for the piece today. I am so excited to share this with you guys. It has been one of my most worn pieces, so I've had it made for like 4 or 5 months now, probably 4, and I have worn it maybe every week. It's been a throw-on dress for me. It's been an easy, beautiful piece, and I really love the whole quilt thing. I've loved it since it came out a couple of years ago, and I love the high end, the low end, whatever it is. I think it's beautiful. But when I was looking for a dress like this, it was either really high priced because it was a wonderful, sustainable brand that was making things ethically and sourcing their fabric sustainably, or it was a small maker who also should be selling their craft at the price that they should price it for what it's worth. And both of those things are really high quality and really expensive sometimes, and I just didn't want to pay that. But I went on a little journey of looking for this quilt topper. So this is the fabric that I found. I ended up getting it for $40 off of Whatnot from a blanket guy who sells quilts and blankets and was selling this quilt topper in this amazing fabric. It feels like it's a scrap quilt that someone just made and maybe just didn't finish it. And I'm very specific about my colors. Even though I do like a lot of colors, I feel like they have to be more specific, kind of springy, some bold, some not, some muted. And I love that the quilt thing kind of brings in some bohemian and some colorful but still muted Americana classic vibes. So with all of that being said, I wanted to make one of these dresses. So this is the inspo again, since I have blabbed away, but we are going to make one of these today, or at least I'm going to toss it back to a past Addie who's going to make one. And then I made a pair of matching pants for Shepherd, and I cannot handle them. They're so cute. But I'll probably pop back in here a couple more times because I really just filmed the process and didn't give much background at all. So we're gonna toss it back. We're gonna sew this amazing dress and end up with something that I have worn so many times. So let's toss it back. Also, I put up all of my fall decorations. I am a full-on fall decorator. Almost like Christmas decorators. I am that way with fall, where it's like September 10th. I am full fall decorated. So I made a cute little pie garland. Let me actually know, I did film making it, but it's like a cute little quirky craft. So I might share that if you guys want me to. Let me know in the comments if you want me to. But I was just going to say that I did a pattern with this dress for the top of it because I wanted it to be a very specific shape. And I didn't really have pieces that I trusted myself with to copy as that specific shape. So you are going to get to see me using a pattern in this one, and I will link the pattern below. It was one that I purchased off of Etsy. I can't remember the name, but I'll put it somewhere in the video also. But it was a great pattern, and I just used it for the bodice, but I'll chat more about that as we continue. So like
like I said, I'm using a pattern for the bodice of this dress. I just wanted a specific shape to the top, and of course using a pattern is going to be the best way to do that. I also wanted the pattern on this quilt topper to be laid out really intentionally on the dress. So the pattern of this quilt is called a wedding ring quilt, and it's relatively geometric. So I found the spot that I wanted to be central on the bust and made sure it was centered and cut my front pattern piece out once I had it where I wanted it. Okay, I know I just said that I wanted to lay the print out intentionally, and it's gonna look like I'm not doing it intentionally on the back, but I promise I am, because I wanted the back to not be so centered, and I was also trying to use as little fabric as possible because, of course, as little waste as possible, but I also needed a huge rectangle for the skirt of this dress because I wanted to gather it. So for the back, I didn't center the ring pattern, but I also kind of liked that it wasn't too symmetrical. So once I had my bodice pieces laid out and cut both of them out, I actually realized that this pattern was too big for me because complete user error, this pattern is amazing. But when I was buying the pattern, I just got really excited and bought the first one that I liked, paying no attention to the size, and I accidentally bought the large size of this pattern, and I wasn't about to reprint and cut a paper pattern, so I just used my understanding of pattern making to reposition the darts on the sides and to cut the excess off of the sides and the top. So pay attention to your pattern sizing and don't get too excited like I did. So now for a little part that I didn't film because I was in the zone and completely forgot, but I made this cute little graphic to show you how attaching these bodice pieces goes. So these are the front and back bodice pieces. First things first, we have to sew the dart into the bodice. This means folding that little triangle on the side into itself and sewing a seam across the front to make a dart. I'll link a video on bodice starting so you can actually see what's happening here. But once the dart is done, we're putting the front bodice and the back bodice face to face, matching up the sides and sewing a seam on either side of the bodice, which creates a beautiful tube that will become the top of our dress. I also repeated this same process with some white cotton for lining, since this fabric is just a tad see-through and it will help the bodice to hold up. Here I'm just showing you the side seams that I did to attach the front and back. I also zigzag stitched and pressed the seams backwards. And here you can see what the darts look like on the inside of the white cotton lining. So now I need to mark from the pattern where my straps are going to go so I can attach them between the lining and the front piece of the bodice. Next up, making the straps. I cut 2 strips of fabric that were 18 inches long and 3 inches wide. I wanted a wider strap, at least an inch wide once folded, and wasn't quite sure of the length I wanted for the strap, so I went longer and wider than needed and played from there. I landed on a 1 1/4 inch wide strap, so I folded the piece of fabric down the center, which proved to be very difficult because of the wedding ring print and how that's sewn together in a circle, but then I pressed them flat with my iron so the seams would be nice and straight, and then I sewed a straight stitch down the open side of the strap. After sewing, I flipped the straps right side out using a handy dandy tool called a loop turner, which I definitely had to Google the name of, and I pressed the straps flat again with my iron, which means it's time to attach them. So as you saw earlier, I marked my fabric where the straps are meant to go on the lining and the bodice front. So I put my lining and bodice face to face, lined up the side seams and the strap markings on both of those pieces, and pinned all the way around the top to make sure they lined up before attaching the straps. Something I do when I am putting straps into a top like this, if it's lined, is that I like to line up my lining and my bodice piece before I ever put the straps in, so that I know I don't have any extra bulky fabric on the sides or the middle or something, because that will throw off my strap placement if I have to fix something like that. So I go ahead and pin the whole thing and then just take out pins to add the straps later. So here I just left a space where that strap was going to be when I was pinning around the top of this shirt. It's also helpful to note that I typically attach the straps to the front bodice, but leave the back straps unattached and don't sew the back all the way together until I can try it on to figure out how long the strap should be total. I'm shorter through my torso and tend to like a higher neckline on dresses like this, and I find this the easiest way for me to do this to achieve the length that I like in the strap. So here you can see where I marked off where my straps are going to go so I don't sew up that opening for the back straps. Back to the front straps. Once they are lined up between the front bodice and the lining, I sew the lining and front straps into place, leaving 2 inches of space at the back strap spots to attach them later, and toss on the bodice to figure out how long I want the straps, and it's already turning into something so cute, and I'm getting so excited that this is actually taking the shape that I want it to. Once I had the length of the straps pinned where I wanted them, I measured how much to cut off, made sure they were the same length, and pinned them between the bodice and the lining just like the front straps, but on the back. Take note of how this looks too, because it looks like it's going to be wrong being like looped around the lining this way, but I promise it's right. So once I had those pinned where I wanted them to be and how long I wanted them to be, I stitched the holes I left for the straps, securing the straps inside, and the bodice is taking shape. To make this dress look even more polished and keep all the seams flat, I'm going to understitch the neckline. So to do this, I'm flipping the lining above the bodice piece so both pieces are inside out. And then I'm ironing the seam allowance inside the bodice upwards toward the lining because I'm going to stitch the seam allowance to the lining. This will keep the lining from peeking up over the edge of the neckline and giving that little peak of white that we just don't want. And no, I don't have an ironing board, but I do have a table and a towel, and that's all that matters. Once that's ironed, I stitch the seam allowance to the lining all the way around the inside of the neckline, which is what I'm showing you right here, even though it's white thread on white fabric, so you can't really see it, but there's just a little stitch there. And then once that's attached, I flip the front back over the lining and iron the neckline stitch. And look how crisp this looks. I love how nice this makes things look. So this completes the bodice portion of the dress, which of course means I have to try it on. And I love this portion of sewing when things start to come together. So next we have to crop the top to the length that I want to then do the big flowy skirt on the bottom. So you're getting a really good postpartum mom bod midriff here. So I'm just playing around with some lengths until it ends up somewhere that I like it. I wanted it to be somewhere around my natural waist, maybe a little bit shorter because I do like the shorter kind of bust line on it. But once I have that folded under, and this is just a rough pin, I am pinning it so I can measure it later and make sure it's all cropped correctly. I also noticed while I was trying this on that the darts were just puckering a little bit, so I took those in and cut off the excess fabric from the waist, and we can move on to the skirt. My gosh, I just love this quilt topper so much, and I cannot believe I found it. So moving on to the skirt portion, I wanted to, again, be intentional with how much of this fabric that I was using. I had a good bit left, but I also wanted to just keep as much as possible for a potential pair of pants, maybe for Peter, or something for Shepherd. I love a little matching outfit. A lot of my sewing process is honestly just me crawling around on the fabric trying to figure it out, so I thought I'd let you guys in on that part of the process, because instead of using a pattern, which I'm sure you could find a pattern that has a rectangle like this for the base of this skirt, but I'm just kind of MacGyvering my own. So we figured out and marked some of our measurements, so it's time to cut. So as I'm cutting this, I will walk you through exactly what I did. So I am 5'4", and I like a good long maxi dress for this style of dress we're doing. And for me, that is 47 to 49 inches total. So I am doing a 47-inch long total dress, and the bust is already 15 inches long. And so I need 32 inches for the skirt of this dress, plus seam allowances and some wiggle room for hems. I also wanted to figure out a way to make the wedding ring pattern edge on the hem of my dress, because I thought it would just be a really cute touch and make it just look more special. So I'm going to show you another little graphic to show you how I cut it, because this piece is so big I feel like you can't really tell what's going on in the video. So for some more specifics, let's pretend that this yellow piece is our quilt with the two wedding ring edges that are just kind of haphazard. So the waist measurement of this actual dress is 36 inches, and the length of the dress skirt that I need is 32 inches plus any seam allowances or extra. I also need this piece of fabric to be 72 inches wide, because if the waist measurement is 36 and I want to double the amount of fabric to give a really cute gather, I need my fabric to be at least 72 inches wide. I just did 100 because that's how many inches I had, and I wanted a little bit more than double since this is a thinner fabric, but it has to be at least 72 to get a good gather. We also only need it to be 32 inches long, which only took about half of the fabric that I had left, and I cut 35 inches to leave some seam allowance and some extra in case I wanted to change the length. So here I've cut my rectangle with the wedding ring edge, and I cut off the excess wedding ring portion that's going to be sewn together to make the skirt, and here is the cutout piece for the skirt. Next step we need to do is making this into a tube so that we can gather it to actually be the skirt. So my skirt is one big rectangle. You can cut it into two if you want side seams, but I'm just going to do one seam down the back. So I folded my fabric in half face to face and then pinned all the way down the side that was open, straight stitched, and then did a zigzag stitch at the edge, but you could also serge it if you have a serger. Next, we're going to gather the waist, and this is one of those other things that I did not film because I guess I was just too in it or something, but we're going back to our cute little graphics. So this little tube is our skirt tube, and we are going to gather the top of it. So in order to do that, we're going to make a long straight stitch around the top of our tube. I put my stitch length on 5 because that's the longest it will go, and I recommend as long as it'll go on your machine. And you don't want to back stitch this stitch at the beginning or the end because because it will lock the threads into place, and we want them to be mobile so we can pull this fabric to ruffle it. So with some technical things in place, we're going to stitch a 1/4 inch away from the edge of the fabric, and then we're going to stitch a 1/2 inch away from that to make 2 long stitches around the whole top of the skirt. When stitching these, also make sure to leave your ends long enough to tie a knot at one end, and once you tie those knots on one side, you're going to start pulling the threads at the other end of the stitch to start gathering the ruffle at the top of your skirt. Keep pulling those threads until your waist measurement of your skirt is the same as the waist measurement of the top. I then flipped the skirt inside out while leaving the top right side out and placed the top inside of the skirt so that they were face to face and the waist hem was together. I then pinned the gathered skirt and the top together, making sure to space the ruffles out evenly around the whole skirt of the dress. Then I made sure that my stitch length was back to normal and stitched between my 2 gathering stitches on the skirt to attach the top to the bottom, and then did a zigzag stitch on the edge to keep it from fraying. Once those stitches were done, I flipped the dress right side out and ironed the waistband flat, and all that's left is the hem.
Okay, we are flashing a little forward because here is the dress completely done, but I wanted to show you how I did the hem, and of course, in true fashion for this video, I did not film it. It was really because I was trying to figure out how I wanted to do it, because I wanted to keep that adorable edge of the wedding ring quilt on here, and it was a little hard for me to think, like, I guess I could make bias tape and round edges and do that, but I had this idea to take the same white lining that's up here and pretty much just kind of sew along the edge where it fit into these shapes and then fold it over and make it into a hem. So I know that may not make much sense, but I'll show you some other little shots of what I did on the inside while I'm talking through this too. So there'll be some other screen situations. But I can just show you now what that sort of looked like at the end. So you can see it has all of these arches and triangles, and I did the white, sort of made my own bias tape, but I didn't actually bias tape it. So if this is my lining kind of piece of fabric, all I did for this edge was take the piece of dress and sew face to face with the lining just along the edge. I just took a really big long rectangle because I wasn't sure how much I wanted to fold up either. So I sewed this along the edge to where it actually just fit, and it looked really rough when I did this because I just wanted to make sure that I could get the shape that I wanted, and this was the way I knew to accomplish it. If you know a different way, that's great, but this really worked for me and I'll probably do it again. So I just took the lining and sewed it along the front of the fabric, and then once I had sewed it, I cut off all the excess, and you can actually see right here where I zigzag stitched the edge of it. You can kind of see like the angles and everything that is zigzag stitched in here, and then folded it over and ironed it around the whole edge, and then sewed it to the dress with just like probably a 1/4 inch in order to hold that hem down. So I did it with white thread too because I thought it kind of blended in with some, but I also liked a little bit of that handmade look to it. So this is the outside of the hem, and this is the inside of the hem, and I really don't know if that made much sense at all, but basically I just played with it until I ended up with the hem that I wanted, and this is the bottom of the dress, and now we're gonna try it on and show you what it looks like. This is the best thing that I've ever made in my entire life. Hands down, all the things. I love this dress so much, and I've worn it so many times already, and I'm just so happy with the shape of it, how it lays, and just everything. It feels so casual and easy, but I've also worn it like with clogs to a nice dinner, and I am wearing my little bodysuit thing underneath it because I just didn't want to take it off, but it's the perfect like coverage for me. I wear it all through the warmer months. I've put turtlenecks under it to wear it in the winter or fall now, but I just am so happy with how it turned out, and I think the quilt pattern is gorgeous. It has that beautiful Americana touch, and I'm just so happy to own a dress like this now, especially with just the details and the fact that I made it. I think it's so much fun to wear stuff that you make yourself because it's just that much more special because you made it. So the hem is absolutely my favorite part of this, and yeah, I just love it. It'll work for future maternity also because it has so much space in here. So I like the oversizedness and just the way that I can wear it for however long and forever because it's so amazing and feels so me. So we're gonna move on to another little fun project. We're going to make a pair of pants for my son to match. So I'm throwing it back again. And this was actually one morning before church because I wanted to wear my dress and I really wanted Shepherd to match me. So I just whipped up a pair of pants real quick and I think they turned out so cute. So let's throw it back and whip up some pants. Okay, so it's been maybe like 3 months since I even made that quilted dress, maybe 2, but I am going to make a pair of matching pants for Shepherd. I think I want to wear the dress to church tomorrow, so I'm just gonna whip up something real quick and walk you through a little bit of it. So we're gonna start by taking a pair of Shepherd's pants that currently fit him and maybe make them a little bigger so they'll fit him a little longer, but let's just get started. To start making my tiny man's tiny pants, I am folding the pair of pants I want to use as the pattern down the front and using the same cotton lining fabric from the dress as pattern paper, but also for the lining for the final pair of pants. So I'm folding the lining fabric over because I need 2 front leg pieces and 2 back leg pieces that match, so I'm going to make 2 at a time. I'm then placing my folded pants on top of the lining and tracing 1 inch away from the pattern pants. This is for seam allowance, but I also want the final quilted pants to be a little bit bigger than these tan pants, and since the tan pants are also super stretchy and the quilt is not, I need to add a good bit of fabric to the pattern pieces to make sure they fit my little man. Another adjustment I made to the pants was to make them wider leg, so I also added fabric there and to the waist because it's going to be elastic waist, so I needed a little more space there. So I'm just using a red gel pen to draw this pattern on the lining. I know there's chalk and other ways to do it, but this is just my haphazard way of creating my own pattern and I don't have any chalk, so don't come for me. I then cut out those pant legs and moved on to the next legs, which will be the back legs of the pants. This shape is essentially the same as the front pieces, but I needed a deeper crotch depth to accommodate for his little diaper butt. So I folded my tan pattern pants back over the other way, so both back legs were touching, and then copied the front leg lining pieces for the back shape, so they would be the same size, and then used the crotch drop of the tan pants to make sure he has enough diaper room. Once the back piece was traced on the lining and the crotch was the proper depth, I cut the lining pieces, and here are the 4 pant leg pieces, so I can move on to cutting the quilt pieces by using the lining pants pieces as templates. So these pants are quite tiny and there are large parts of the quilt that are mainly tan, so I wanted to make sure I had the pattern laid out intentionally where you could see plenty of color and pattern. So when I had the quilt pattern laid the way I wanted to, I cut the quilted pant leg pieces out. Next step on these quilt pants is to actually quilt them. This is a step that we did not do on the dress because of the loose nature of the dress. It shouldn't really pull and be tugged too much, and so it doesn't need much reinforcement, but toddler pants definitely need to be reinforced because this fabric is also a little fragile and see-through, and he goes hard crawling around everywhere these days. Before we begin, quilting is also typically 3 pieces of fabric, usually including batting, so I know that I'm calling this quilting, but it technically is just 2 pieces of fabric. It's not actually quilting. Back to the fake quilting of these pants, we are just going to do some straight stitches down the front of the quilt to attach the lining to the quilt top piece of the pants. So to do this, I am laying my quilt pieces inside facing up and laying the coordinating linings on top. I am then pinning them together to make sure the fabric doesn't budge while I draw the lines that I'm going to quilt. So to draw those lines, I'm using my cutting mat and marking 1-inch spaces across the face of the pants because that's how far apart I want my stitches. I then use my mat as a straight edge to draw the lines down the face of the fabric and copy that on each leg of the pants. Once all my lines are drawn on each leg, I take those to my sewing machine and just do a straight stitch down the red line to make them quilted.
And here are the quote-unquote quilted pieces with the stitches down the face of the fabric, reinforced and ready to make a pair of pants. To do that, we are laying one front leg piece face to face with the corresponding back leg piece. It's probably good to note also that I marked each piece with an F for front and B for back, so I didn't have to figure out which was which every time. But I then pinned all those pieces together to sew the outside and inside leg seams like these pieces here. I then trimmed the excess of the edges of the pant seams because we're going to take it back to our sewing machine to zigzag stitch the edges to keep them from fraying. And here are our pant legs, which we are now going to attach to make our pants base. So I flip one leg of the pants right side out and put that pant leg inside the other pant leg so they are face to face, and make sure that I'm matching up the crotch drop so I can pin around the crotch. Little tip, start in the middle of the crotch while pinning to make sure that the center seams are lined up, since that's the most important part, and then pin from the center up one side and the center to the other side. So once those sides are pinned, I'm sewing those together and zigzag stitching to finish it off, and we have the base of our pants.
Okay, it's the next morning and we have made some progress on our pants. And today is the day that I want him to wear them, and so hopefully we will get them done soon. I just tried them on during a diaper change. You can hear him in the background hanging out over there. Hi, bud. But I tried them on during a diaper change and I think they will fit for about a week. So they're a little on the smaller side just because this is not a stretchy fabric at all. But I measured the length, and so I kind of like the cuff. I might keep some level of cuff on there. I just want it to be the quilted fabric if we are gonna cuff it. And then the waistband is good, but I do need to add an actual waistband to it because it just fits right above his diaper. So this is gonna be so perfect. Let's finish the waistband of these pants.
We're in the home stretch of these pants, and all we have left is adding the waistband and hemming them. So we're going to start with the waistband, and I am using a piece of scrap fabric from the skirt tube of the dress and measuring how much fabric I need around this waist. And then I'm cutting the excess and sewing that strip together to make a long tube for my waistband. So that tube gets pinned to the waist of the pants face to face, and I left excess fabric on the end of the waistband to fold over and make my own casing for the elastic waist. So I'm sewing that tube to the top of the pants and ironing the waistband up above the pants to flatten the waistband seam. Next, I'm creating the elastic casing, making sure the finishing on the inside looks good while still being super functional. So I'm folding 1/2 inch down from the top of that waistband fabric and ironing that to make sure it's crisp, and then folding another 1.5 inches down from the top to overlap the waistband seam. I'm using 1-inch elastic, so I want to make sure I have enough space in his waistband for that. I then iron that fold to make it nice and crisp and pin around that band because we're going to stitch the ditch on the front of this fabric to attach the waistband. So here I'm stitching the ditch, which is sewing in the seam on the front of the pants, making sure to pick up the folded edge of the top of the waistband on the back to finish the waistband off nicely. I also left a 2-inch space at the back of the pants to put the elastic through. So I have my little 1-inch elastic. I push it through one side of the opening and make sure it stays flat all the way around the waistband. And then once it comes out the other side, I sew the elastic together and close that 2-inch opening at the back of the waistband to complete the elastic waist. And all that's left now is the hem. So for that, I trim the excess, leaving 1 inch of extra fabric to do a rolled hem on the bottom of the pant leg. And to do that hem, I am folding a 1/2 inch up and then another 1/2 inch, ironing that flat and sewing a seam around that whole circle to hold the hem in place. And then I trim any excess threads, and these pants are done!
Okay, so amazing. I am so excited about these pants. I just love them. They're so cute. I love the quilted detail too. I'm glad that we did the little seams down the front because not only will it make them stronger, but it also will be just really cute for a little design element, and it will hold all of these little pieces in place. I'm realizing now with the dress that I made that I probably need to add some seams to it just because it needs a little fortifying in all of the little quilted pieces. But I love the shape of these. They have a little bit of like straighter, kind of wider leg, and they fit him so perfectly and just look really well made. But my favorite thing is that the dress matches the pants and we get to match. So we are gonna head off to church in our little outfits, and I'll post a little picture on here too so you can see us matching. But Best thrift flip ever. So happy about this, and so happy I have a little bit of fabric left, because then maybe I'll make Peter something and we can all match as a little summery baby family. So thank you so much for watching this thrift flip and for figuring these things out with me. I will see you next week. You are well loved. Bye.